I am Dr. Jennifer Keitt, half of the doctor daughter duo here at the Keitt Institute. We're a center for emotional development and well being, and we specialize in giving you the tools to help you elevate, transform, and thrive in life.
And I am Morgan Holmes, COO of the Keitt Institute and the other half of the doctor daughter duo here at the Keitt Institute. Today, we're going to start our series talking about what it means to be a learning leader. So, Mom, why don't you tell us, what do we think when it comes to learning and leadership?
So here's what's interesting about this brand new series that we have developed called Excellence Exposed. It's going to really look at all of those qualities that make great leaders. One thing before I go into the definition of what a learning leader is we need to talk about leadership. That word can be very scary if you don't have leader in your title. But we believe here at the Keitt Institute that life leadership looks like an individual who understands this one very universal principle. You cannot lead anyone else until you have led yourself. You can't lead families. You can't lead companies. You can't lead in friendships. You just can't lead without being committed to leading yourself first, which brings us to what it looks like to be a learner, a leader who learns. We here at the Keitt Institute pride ourselves on, by example, showing what life leadership looks like and what it means to be a learner as you are leading. In fact, I am broadcasting here and recording this from my personal library. These books are actually authors that I have interviewed over the many, many years that I've been on the radio. These books are the lessons learned, the expert advice, the what to do, the how to do it that I have been accumulating for over 30 years. I realize when I sit in this room, my life has been and continues to be one of life leadership. And so, Morgan, when you think about you're younger than I am and younger than a lot maybe of people that are out there in terms of leadership, what do you think that a learning leader looks like?
I think one of the main things to think about when I think about when I think about leadership and learning is that it means that I'm constantly growing and developing. It means that I'm not just consuming information, but I'm taking it in so that I can then begin to immediately apply it. For me, learning doesn't look like just basically like eat as it relates to information. It's sample. Is this really good? Is this practical and useful for where I am and where I'm trying to go? And if yes, how do I apply it? That's what I think of when I think of learning leadership.
You know, when we think about learning leaders, and we want you guys listening to this to think about what does it look like when or if I develop a learning agenda for
Mhm.
my life. In fact, here at the Keitt Institute, we don't start any of our customized experiences, our trainings, our development resources. We do not start them until we start our clients or have them develop a learning agenda. I want to challenge you as we dive through this conversation talking about what learning leadership looks like. I want you to begin to think about what is my own personal learning agenda? What new skills do I need to learn about? What information and knowledge do I need to gather? How do I need to develop myself as a leader so I can lead myself first? Is there anything else, Morgan, that they need to be thinking about?
Yeah, the one last thing that you need to think about is where am I going to apply this information? So we've talked about what it is that you need. We've talked about, how might you be able to use it? But the key thing that you need to be thinking about is where relevancy as it relates to the information that you're taking in makes it much more applicable and makes it actionable. And that's what we want for you.
When we come back, why should you be a learning leader? These are very, very important reasons. Stay tuned.
What we're going to be talking about next is why you need to be a leader that learns. As we already talked about leadership, we talk about leadership all the time because We believe at the Keitt Institute, you can't lead anyone else until you've learned to lead yourself. So that means you're a leader, even if you don't have the title. So, what are some of the reasons why you need to be learning as a leader?
We've researched, and there are very interesting results for leaders who refuse to learn. And we're going to use the pain and the suffering of what it looks like when you are not a learning leader to motivate and to encourage and to instruct you on how to become one. So, one of the things that we talked about in our research when we were going through what should we be talking about with this learning leadership topic is stagnation. In fact, the research says if you are not a learning leader, a leader who learns, you can become stagnant, irrelevant, and ineffective. Let me say those three things again: stagnant, irrelevant, and ineffective. Yikes. So let's talk about what it looks like when you're stagnant as a leader. A stagnant leader, here's what we've defined it as, is someone who gets stuck in their ways and doesn't really try to thrive or grow as a leader. They are in what is known as the box of status quo. What does it mean more practically, though, Morgan, to be a stagnant leader?
Well, when you think about stagnation, you think about spaces or you think about like a body of water that's just sitting, right? Things might be growing, but really what's happening is death and decay. So if you're stuck and if you're stagnant, that means that you're dying. You're either in life growing or dying. That's just what it is. You can either see the growth or you can see the death. And if you're going to be someone who refuses to learn, who refuses to take in new information, who refuses to grow and change, there's only one other alternative, and that's that you're someone who has decided to die. And is that really what you want for yourself? Is the question that you need to be asking.
Wow. So, stagnancy, what it looks like when one is stagnant, there are no fresh ideas. Here's another tell: that person doesn't want anyone else around them to grow. So they're shooting down what could be, what should be. They do not want to move because stagnant, as Morgan has so eloquently said, is a synonym for dying. Here's the reality. We are choosing every single day. We are choosing to either grow or by default. There is no such thing in life as standing still. It is all about growing. And if you are not growing, you are choosing to die. I have one grandson. It happens to be Morgan's son. And Ramsey is amazing. And what I love most about being his Mimi and watching him is growing, the growth. My husband and I talk about it. We will talk to him on a Monday, and by Wednesday there are new words, new vocabulary, new thoughts, new ideas. And not we're not just looking at his physical body getting bigger. I am amazed at how his vocabulary is growing. Thought is growing. Emotions are growing. I can literally see this little man coming up right before me. I mean, Morgan, when I think about that, I think about that's how we are as people. Now, when we're grown, it's hard to see the physical other than, maybe a couple of wrinkles, couple of gray hairs, but we need to be growing just like Ramsey every single day. How do you push against the natural default of being stagnant? What would you say? What was one piece of advice we can give?
I think for me, it's the need and the desire to do something different. I think it kind of ties to some of the conversations we have around purpose, about thinking about your life and you are here to do on a bigger scale. And I don't just mean to do as in to work, but I do mean to do as really more so to be. Like, who are you supposed to be? There is a specific way in which you need to be moving through the world. Do you have all the information to do that? Probably not, because we don't all know everything. And then how can you get that information? That's through the learning process, through the information sources that you've curated for yourself, and making sure that those sources are supporting who you want to be, how you want to move through the world, how you want to think. If you want to think more ethically, are you getting a diverse set of pieces of information? If you want to think more spiritually, are you getting spiritual information from the sources that you know are the most credible within your religious practice? Those are the types of things that we mean when we say growing and dying, and those are the types of things that we mean when we say being stagnant and not, and then that leads us to relevancy. So there's this idea of stagnation, and then there's this
Absolutely.
idea of relevance.
I'm so glad that you mentioned it, because when we come back, we're going to look at what a leader who is irrelevant, what they show up like in the world, and how to avoid that trap.
We're going to start this conversation, or continue this conversation, really about being a learning leader, by talking about one of the pitfalls or the traps that we might fall into when we choose not to learn, and that is being irrelevant. No one wants to be irrelevant. So how does learning tie to relevancy as it relates to yourself, both personally and professionally?
So we've researched and looked at what an irrelevant leader looks like. It's hard for me to even say those words, because this, full disclosure, let me take the mask off. This is one of my greatest fears. I do not want to be irrelevant, not mattering to anyone or to life. That's just like, ooh. So let's talk about what it looks like. Here are my notes. An irrelevant leader is someone who's out of touch or not really connected to what's going on. They might not understand the current issues or needs of their team, their family, or the world around them. Or their actions or decisions might not match up with what's important or necessary. And here's what's key: this makes it hard for others to see them as valuable or meaningful in their leadership. Now, I know when you hear those words, I know this, I know this, I know this, someone in your world comes to mind. We can spot irrelevant people 400 miles away. They're like those big statues just sitting in the middle of the world, or in our offices, or in our families, or in our friendship groups. And it's like, why are you here? As leaders, our job is to stay relevant. Do you have any thoughts, Morgan, about what it would look like if we decided once and for all we're going to be relevant? Full stop. What does relevancy look like?
I think relevance really requires you to think outside yourself. So it kind of requires a little bit of empathy. It requires you to think about, okay, what are the contexts that I'm in? Do I have enough information or enough thought around what's important to the people that are around me? I think about when you talk about friendship groups, right? Do I keep up with, even if I don't necessarily care as deeply as some of my friends about certain things, do I keep up with what's going on in the areas that they're interested in, so that I can have relevant conversation when it comes to your marriages? Am I interested in, or at least somewhat willing to ingest information about the things that my partner is? I know, for instance, when I first started dating my husband, I don't watch sports. I don't care about sports. Never really have. He does. And so what did I do? I learned. I asked questions. I became invested to the point that we can have a conversation about what's happening with Kevin Durant. And he's like, oh, you knew something I don't know. Just being able to have that conversation makes me relevant, and continues to bring value to the relationship, because I'm helping to enrich his life. And so that's what we want you to think about when we think about relevance. How can you be valuable to the people that you're connected to?
It goes, that's such a great example. It brought me all the way back before I go on to other ways that we can be relevant, but it brought me all the way back of watching your dad as a black belt in karate when we first started dating. There was no one else in the gym but me sitting there in the seats. Didn't know anything about a front kick or a side kick and watching him in tournaments, etc. You are absolutely correct, because that brought a camaraderie, it brought a connection. Now what that looks like in our professional lives is even more dramatic, I think. We are public speakers. That means I've got audiences all over the place, and my audiences range in age all the way down to 13 and 14-year-olds, all the way up to the oldest audience member that I've had to date is 91. I will be honest with you, to be relevant to a 13-year-old and a 91-year-old, I'm like, what in the world? The breadth of caring and compassion and wanting and curiosity that is necessary to be able to even encourage or speak to or inspire a 13-year-old all the way to up to a 91-year-old, you better believe I am obsessed with being relevant. Relevant to my kids, relevant to my grandkids, relevant to my husband, friends, and audiences. Relevancy is cash money in the bank of the currency, if you will, of our relationships. We want you to be relevant.
So up next,
We're talking about learning leadership. And there's a third pitfall that we want to unpack for you right now. Morgan?
what we're talking about now is that when you refuse to learn, you're really deciding to be ineffective in your leadership and in your personal relationships. And we don't want that for you. So we're going to talk about what to look out for and what that means to us.
Ineffective leadership. This was very interesting to me. So here's our researched information. An ineffective leader is basically someone who's not getting the job done. Now we can say that, right? And we were like, oh, okay, they don't know what they're doing, or they're ineffective in what they're doing. But it's a lot more than that. This person, this ineffective leader, might struggle to make decisions. They struggle to communicate clearly. They're struggling to motivate other people. Their actions or decisions might lead to problems. It might not produce the desired results. So, in other words, if you are ineffective, it means that you do not have the ongoing knowledge and information, the oomph, the raw material to be able to communicate effectively in your marriage, with your team, in your business, in your friendships. You don't have the raw material to keep things moving forward in your marriages, in your home life, in your business endeavors, in your business. If you're an entrepreneur, you don't have the decision making skills necessary, because you're not learning about how to make effective decisions or gathering other diverse opinions and ideas in order to be able to make decisions effectively. You, in essence, have stopped contributing to the very essence of your life. That is so scary to me, Morgan. What do you think about ineffective leadership, and how can we encourage people to get out of that rut if they're stuck there?
Yeah, I think one of the things that really stood out to me when you're reading the definition is that not only, can they not make decisions, but they cause problems. That's that. Oof. If you're like, I can't even get my words out right now. Please, if you are going to not contribute, please don't at least derail what I'm trying to do. Like that is one of my pet peeves. Like just get to the side versus standing directly in the way and causing more problems because you refuse to understand the context that you have found yourself in. I liked the idea of gathering information, but then knowing how to make the decision. There's a lot of difference between collective wisdom, gathering information, just gathering, but knowing what to do with that information is so critical. So if you've had leaders who like, oh, let me get everyone's opinion. Oh, what does everybody think about this, and this? At the end of the day, as a leader, as someone who's leading themselves personally in their own life, you can collect information all you want to, but you are responsible for making the decision, and you need to know how to make that decision wisely. That means being able to weigh the pros and cons of what you've brought to the table, and making sure that what you've decided to do is the most effective and it's the most productive for where you're trying to go. And a lot of that comes from learning and ingesting information, but doing it with a critical eye. We don't want you just consuming for the sake of consumption. We want you being a critical consumer of what you are listening to out there in the world right now.
You know, ineffective people. I just this topic to me is so anti what I value. Uh, you said something that I need to reiterate that. If you are not going to be effective, don't hinder progress. Don't hinder your teams. Don't hinder your company. Let me give a very practical example. Huge news headlines about quiet quitting right after COVID. And what that looks like, in essence, is deciding I'm no longer going to be effective, but I'm going to sit where I am. Get out of the way. Do not do that. That is not helping you. It's not helping your colleagues. It's not helping your company. If you are or have quietly quit your marriage, I'm not going to say the next sentence that I should say because I think that you know the end. Stop it. Be effective. Get engaged. Do not be ineffective in your parenting. Do not be ineffective in your leadership. Do not be an ineffective person. You're bigger than that. You're greater than that. You have bigger potential out there. This one is just the one that just, oh, it gets me. It gets me. It gets me. It gets me. And I do not want anyone out there who is ineffective in their life to just stay that way. What's one thing, Morgan, that they can do to just move from that state of being ineffective?
I think that's a really good question because there's times when we find ourselves lacking in the skill set that we need. So we know that if we were to contribute, it wouldn't be productive. And one thing that I think that we can do is to step aside, but step aside with purpose. So I remember when I was working for a company and I needed to develop a new skill set. So, and I just didn't have it. Like I tried and it was bad. Like it was very bad. I got cussed out by my boss and everything, right? So I took that information. It hurt my feelings, but I was like, they're not wrong. I actually don't know what I'm doing with this regard. So I stepped to the side and then began to skill stack, right? I took courses. I learned what I had to do, all while still trying to contribute in other ways. And I think another way, as you were talking about parenting, that spoke to me was the thing that you've always said is that it got to the point with my math skills that you just could not help, period. You knew as much as you knew, and then that was it. Instead of saying, well, I just can't do it, so you can't do it, you stepped to the side, you found help when I needed help, but you were always there to encourage me to continue to move forward. So I think that when we find ourselves in spots where we see the potential of being ineffective because we don't have the skill set, and it's something that we just might not get, being able to find the resources to support the people that are connected to us is very important towards helping effectiveness. And then also being able to be an encouragement for people to use said resources appropriately. And then building skills where we can, I think are all great ways to combat ineffectiveness while still maintaining relationships, while still being an effective leader overall. Because if you provide your team with something that they need and they say, you know what, they didn't have it, but they got me what I needed, they will forever praise you for being able to support them moving forward versus being in the way.
Oh, you done said a mouthful, but before I go on another tangent, because you said so much good stuff, I will say this for those that are parents out there and you're leading companies, you're leading your businesses, you're leading, and you have a family. And what Morgan said is gospel. She's my firstborn, and I knew by the time she was in first grade, I was in trouble. I'm just not going to even say, yes, I have doctor in front of my title, but I am a communicator. I am not a science, math, logical, structured individual. I had to get out of the way if she even hoped to have a prayer. And when she was valedictorian of her class, come on, I knew that wasn't me. But I knew that just because I knew how to get her the resources, I knew how to be effective in supporting her, that enabled her to soar. Do not be the problem, be the solution. And when we come back, we're going to start talking about some actual, practical, even more strategies on how to be a learning leader. We're going to talk about what it actually looks like to embrace, to grab hold of, to seize the opportunities that present themselves every single day for you and I to become learning leaders. Now, as we've defined, a learning leader is basically an individual who knows that number one, I cannot lead anybody else until I lead myself. And I have committed myself to having a learning agenda in which I am at all times growing, not becoming stagnant, not becoming ineffective, not becoming irrelevant. I am going to grow. And the first way that you and I can begin to grow intentionally and be a learning leader is by changing our self-talk.
Absolutely. The way that we talk to ourselves determines whether or not we grow. Because if we're talking to ourselves in such a way that says, I really can't, or I don't know, and I can't, like the thought of I can't simply means that you won't. If you can just change that one phrase instead of I can't to a phrase of I can try, simply changing I can't to I can try. I might not actually be able to, but I can at least try. That opens up a world of possibility, because if you try, you're looking at what you're about to do. It's kind of like an experiment, you know? What's going to go right? What's going to go wrong? If things go wrong, where did it go wrong? What can I learn to do better the next time? That shift in mindset is critical in order to open yourself up to learning from all the types of things that we experience in life.
She has hit the nail on the head when she has definitively said to you, remove the words I can't from your internal vocabulary. In fact, when I was raising her and her siblings, I don't recall, I honestly do not recall ever majoring on the can'ts that inevitably come up in life. If we do not program our children or ourselves with this idea that they cannot, then we open up a world of opportunities. Now, am I saying that you can do everything? No. I know for a fact where my limitations lie. But what I will not do is I will not allow those limitations to then stunt my entirety, all of my life, all of what I'm doing, all of where I am trying to grow in my life. And learning leaders do the same. You see, self-talk is that ongoing internal dialogue that develops who you are becoming. Telling yourself, I can't, is not going to help. If you come into a situation or a circumstance, or you run up against your limitations, saying, I might not be able to do that, but there is something that I can do, and then doing that at least gives you options in life. When we get to the point where we're saying, I can't do this marriage, I can't raise these kids, I can't meet my budget, I can't grow this company, I can't be happy, I can't. Do you see how limiting that is? It limits and shrinks instead of saying, I will find a way. Morgan, how do you think that, or how would you encourage someone to really begin to first examine and then begin to reprogram self talk that might be limiting them, saying, I can't?
Yeah, I think there's two different ways that we can do that. So, one of the ways that we can do that is by putting value on the fact that we tried, right? So, we're not going to be good at everything.
Mm.
We're just not. We have talents in some spaces and other spaces that we don't, but there's still effort that we need to put forward. And so being proud of yourself for trying is a drastic shift that can move you towards being willing to get things done and being willing to learn how to do things better. Another thing that we can do is begin to shift our vocabulary. So having a growth oriented mindset. So just like we're valuing effort, meaning we're changing the things that we focus on, we're also going to then make sure that we intentionally point out both when we are growing and when someone else is growing. Oh, hey, I noticed that I didn't get as mad yesterday. Or, oh, hey, I didn't cut these people out when I really wanted to. Those types of things, just pointing out a shift that you see in yourself, pointing out a shift that you see in someone else towards a stated goal of improvement is another good way to open yourself up and to shift your mindset towards being willing to learn and grow.
I love that whole idea of a growth oriented mindset. That actually is the work that we've read so much about in terms of having a growth versus a fixed mindset. Fixed, my intelligence is only this far. I can only be this person in this box. Growth, I can think about it. I can change. I can try. Here's the reality. I can't sing. I wish I could. I wish I could, but I can't. But that doesn't mean that I can't enjoy music, can't enjoy people who do sing, can't use singers. I've done that in the past in which music was a part of a presentation that I was doing. It does not mean that because I'm not gifted in a certain area, that that entire area is closed to me. I can't, or I don't know how to build a rocket ship, but that doesn't mean that I can't imagine with my grandson flying high in the atmosphere. There are always ways to get around it. And the bottom line is, as a leader who learns, you've got to anchor yourself in self-talk that is moving you forward and a growth oriented vocabulary that's not lying, but that is optimistic and positive. Dr. Fredrickson talks about this broaden and build theory of positivity, in which when we have a mindset and words to accompany it that make us grow, it broadens our perspective. It builds our lives. It enables us to continually be relevant in our lives and leadership. It's so important. It's so important. So when we come back, this is exciting. We are going to talk about taking back your power. It's time for you to take charge of your growth.
So, we have been talking about what it means to be a leader who learns, and now it's time for you to take action. Here at the Keitt Institute, ACT has a specific, very specific meaning. It means that you are applying what you've learned so that you can continue to grow and transform. And you need to be asking yourself, what is the one thing that you can do? We have a couple of steps that we're going to talk about, but you need to be thinking for yourself. What's the one thing I can do that I can begin to apply right now so that I can begin to transform and change so that I can begin to grow as a leader?
The first thing that I want to talk to you about when it comes to taking back your power and acting is understand this particular concept. I'm going to read it to you here. Challenges can transform into valuable learning opportunities if you do this one thing: shift your mindset. So here's how that works. Shift your mindset by reframing challenges. Let me be very specific here. Reframing is a power tool. In fact, it's in the emotion regulation strategies that I've researched many, many times. When we reframe challenges, what we do is we actually take back our power, claim the power to be able to see things in a new perspective. The way that we see perspective or the way that we frame things is almost like putting on these glasses. These enable me to see life clearly. When you reframe a challenge, it enables you to change the frame, change your glasses. I've got many different pairs. I wouldn't wear these glasses in the sun. I'd wear sunglasses. Sunglasses allow me to reframe the amount of light that I have coming into my eyes. That's how reframing works. If you get to a challenge, let's say you've got an astronomical budget that you've got to hit this year. Instead of saying, I can't do it. Let's reframe that challenge. Let's decide to put on some sunglasses. Let's see it through a different perspective. Maybe you can't do it all at once, but can you do it in small bites? Can you change your strategy? Can you reach out to clients you haven't thought about before? Can you expand your horizons in terms of strategies, ideas, other kinds of resources, tools? Can you begin to see yourself as the person that hits that astronomical budget? Reframing is your power tool. It is your ability to be able to look a challenge directly in the face and say, I wonder if this actually could be different. Does that look like, how does that, or what does that look like in your life, Morgan, when you reframe challenges?
Yeah, I think a key thing to think about is to look at it as as a potential for learning versus an obstacle that has to be overcome. I know that's like a subtle shift, but if I see, okay, there's a whole lot of stuff that's in front of me, I'm not so sure how I'm going to get past it. What can I learn either from this experience or what can I learn to help me through this experience? That's a different perspective shift, and it makes it not so overwhelming if you think about it. So if I see this mountain of work, or in our instance, right, we have this whole new shift that we're doing in terms of how we show up online. I have to learn a whole lot of new stuff. Like, we need to move to the next level. And instead of seeing that need as this insurmountable obstacle that we don't have enough money to do, I can look at it as I did for, okay, how can I learn? What can I learn? What resources do we have available? What haven't I thought about? What are people saying in the industry? Well, looking at it as a potential to learn, grow, and expand really made this a very tackleable challenge instead of an obstacle that we couldn't overcome.
Love that, especially the part about what if I don't have enough money? Because I know that there are entrepreneurs out there. I know that there are businesses out there that don't think, or they think the challenge is money. How can you still show up with no money or with a tiny budget? You would be surprised at how ingenuity, innovation, answers that come when you decide to reframe that challenge. Which brings us to the second thing that you can do to take back your power, which is identify the lessons. I could go on and on. We are now 10 years into this nonprofit business, and I can tell you the lessons learned have been so great. But it's in our lessons, it's in our history, it's in our experiences that I have found our strength, our story, our uniqueness. And it's the same when we as leaders begin to learn and begin to grow life lessons, as you talked about. Now, let me read this to you. Take time to reflect on the challenges that you've had, that you've overcome, and how you've overcome them. What went well? What could be improved? Reflecting gives you the opportunity to identify the lessons. And self reflection is one of the key transformation tools that we value here at the Keitt Institute. How do we do it, Morgan?
We like to incorporate self-reflection by way of discussions, by way of assessments, and things of that nature. And from a personal standpoint, I think I wanted to make sure that I said that when we're doing this whole reflective practice, you have to stop down and take the time to do it. That's one of the key things that you have to do with learning, period. You have to find a way to incorporate it into your life in a way that makes sense. So for instance, my husband and I, we schedule time to just talk about, what do we need to talk about? Just stuff that needs to come up. Those kind of conversations are reflective conversations. When we have our chief of staff meetings, what do we need to talk about? What's going on? What are our challenges? How have we gotten past other challenges? That's another way of incorporating self-reflection. During our experiences, we are building in quizzes. We are building in breakouts. We are building in times where we're having these group discussions in which we are facilitating reflective moments. Again, integrating them into the experience, whether that's in life, in business, or during one of our learning experiences. You need to think about the ways in which you can integrate reflection so that it's not this cumbersome, oh, I have to stop down and take all this time. Same thing with learning. How can you integrate it into your life versus having to make it some separate deviation from what it is that you're doing on a regular basis?
I love how you're talking about this idea of integrating and life lessons and learning. There is a learning theory that I wholeheartedly agree with, and it's this idea that we implicitly learn so much in our lives. Many instances in our lives. In fact, formal education is a small percentage of how we learn. We implicitly learn through our relationships, through our key relationships, through our coworkers, through our learning environments that we set up in our lives. Let me tell you what those Netflix, Hulu, the news, podcasts, social media, those are implicit learning environments. I'm mentioning that because life lessons happen when we sit down and we become intentional about thinking about how we've learned. Let me say that again. Life lessons happen when you sit down and you ask yourself, who taught me this? How did I actually get this information? Wait, is this true? Is this how I should be doing my retirement? Is this how I should be taking care of my car? Is this how I should be raising my kids? Is this how I should lead my teams? Let me give this example. One of my daughters, not Morgan, another one of them, I've got three daughters and a son, was talking to me about this new team that she's now running. And the new team had a boss that they absolutely loved. And it's hard to walk in as a new boss when the old boss was so beloved. But there are life lessons that she has, life experiences that she's brought to the table that if she reflects on them, those lessons can inform her on how to make the next moves in her life. If we are not intentional about looking at those life lessons and looking at them for a source of implicit learning, information, and question them, if all of this can be taking place in our lives on an ongoing basis, we will become learning leaders because our lives will teach us what has happened and what needs to change. Now, when we come back, we're going to discuss two more ways to take back your power.
we have been talking about what it means to be a learning leader. And specifically now we're talking about how you can take back your power as it relates to learning. One of the key things that I really love about this section is that we are talking about how iteration is a form of power reclamation. When you navigate experiences and challenges and you think about how you've made it through, what you did to do that, and then you think about how you can apply that moving forward, you're able to iterate and change and change and change and change and change because you're able to take practical, relevant information and apply it to brand new situations. Iteration and innovation are the name of the game, and it's one of the biggest benefits that you get when you're willing to ingest and learn new information.
One of the biggest, well, I happen to think they're one of my biggest strengths, but it's the one that drives Morgan crazy, is iteration. And what I mean by that is I will never, until I die, I will never teach something the exact same way 2 times in a row. We literally, Strong Girls, I'll take it. We started Strong Girls in 2017. Strong Girls is our leadership development program for teen young women. I promise you, we have ongoing maybe 5, 6, possibly 7 iterations of the content and that curriculum that we've been teaching young women. Iterate, 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 iteration after iteration after iteration, addition after addition after addition. I will teach professionals. We will go through an experience. It could be 6, 7, 8 modules, and I will inevitably iterate and find something new to be able to add. I feel like you innovate or you die. You iterate or you die. You continue down this journey of changing and tweaking and growing and evolving. It's why Apple has an iOS update every 5 seconds. It drives me crazy, but I really can't say anything about it because they're innovating, they're moving forward, they're fixing what's broken. And I believe this is the heartbeat of a learning leader. You're not just ingesting information for the sake of building up and puffing up your knowledge. You are doing it so that you can tweak and evolve and change and grow. You're pruning off the dead and you're allowing that growth to happen. I know it drives you crazy, Morgan, but what can we leave people with in terms of how they can apply iteration in their lives as leaders?
I'd actually like to leave you with some encouragement because, yes, we do a lot of changing and a lot of improving and tweaking over the years, but things tend to come full circle. We're getting ready to start building out an entirely new way of delivering information, of delivering community, and that wouldn't have been possible without having done it before and then realizing once it got to a point this is no longer working this is no longer working for us. Let's set it to the side and continue to grow, continue to learn, continue to do what we do and get better at what we do. So now when we're circling back around, the level of content that we're going to be able to provide, the level of experience that we're going to be able to provide to a very similar structure that we had before, that is the key of the iteration, right? It's being able to hone your skills, to hone your craft, and then apply it either to new environments or situations, or maybe to old things that you now are able to look at in a brand new light. Like we were literally sitting, struggling, trying to figure out how are we going to do this next thing. And I was like, oh, wait, we had something way back in past 10 years
Woo!
ago that we're able to now pull back and see where it could go based on all the stuff that we've learned in the meantime since we did it the last time, to be able to bring a brand new leveled up experience that we would have never been able to do had we not been willing to change and to grow and to learn along the way.
Taking back your power as a learning leader is exposing excellence at that next level. We strongly encourage you to do what is necessary in order to grow, to change, to learn, to be relevant, and to have staying power in your life.
If you're looking for additional resources, you can visit our website at keittinstitute.org.